Hello everybody, my name's Brittany Anton and I'm here to tell you my top 10 tips for opening a brick and mortar location / top 10 things I wish I knew before I opened my first brick and mortar location. Over the last 19 years, I have opened 7 brick and mortar locations, and even though I'm in the custom shirts business now, my past is in the brick and mortar retail setting. I owned a wedding and bridal shop. So first and foremost, the most important thing that I wish I would have known and then I wish I would have kept doing was to create a business plan and stick to it. The first part's a little easier than the latter. It's kind of like a set of directions, helps you kind of know your benchmarks and guides the decisions that you'll make. So you know, for example, year one, you have hit your benchmark for the sales, so now you can afford to buy that second round of inventory, or you can increase that marketing budget that you had. Number two, this is very, very important. I almost might argue that it is the second most, or the very first most important over creating that business plan, is deciding on your location, because rent is one of the most expensive expenses that you're going to have in your brick and mortar location. But it's also very, very important because if you open your business in the wrong location, you might run the risk of not having that foot traffic or your customers not being able to find you. And also notice how I said rent, right? Because the last thing that you want to do when you are opening your first brick and mortar location is also have to deal with having purchased a building and then keeping up with the maintenance and repairs on it. That is an undetermined expense that you can't plan for. Whoever might be watching this may own a house or may have owned a house before, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be cruising along, sales are good, and then all of a sudden you need to replace the roof. So $30,000 later, which you didn't have, right? You see how that train can get derailed pretty quickly. So for your location, you just got to really think about what type of business that you want to have. So is a destination type business somewhere you can open a shop off the beaten path going to work? Maybe your rent is going to be a little bit more affordable, right? But if you depend on foot traffic, you might not see that foot traffic. Even though being in a mall sounds like a fantastic idea because there's people walking around, you have that parking lot and you have all of those little benefits that go with that. You might want to consider the fact that a lot of malls have hours that you have to keep. They also might ask for things like percentage rent, which is, if you aren't completely aware of that, it is where the mall association actually requires you to report your sales and then give them a portion of it. They only care about the sales. They don't necessarily care if you are actually making money or if you need it. The other thing that comes along with malls and a lot of regular just retail type locations like that is the CAM fees, which stands for care and maintenance. And those can range anywhere from 50 cents a square foot all the way up to $8 or $9 a square foot, depending on where you are. And it's per square foot per year is kind of how the math works out on that, and a square foot is about this big. So you can imagine that could add quite a bit to the expense that you have to pay. And then the last thing that I really want to stress and point out is when you are calling around and you're looking for that perfect location and you call the phone number that's in front of the property or off that website, just keep in mind that price, that square foot, that dollar amount that they are listing it for is what they hope to get for it. Does it mean that that is a solid number? And do not pay that number. When you're negotiating that lease, you're negotiating that number as well as tenant improvement, which could include the build out for, say, fitting rooms or new lighting, those sorts of things. And I can tell you every single time that I have opened a brick and mortar location, my landlord has been more than happy to negotiate some of that stuff into our lease. And, it's been a fantastic experience. And I think we've saved thousands of dollars just by doing that. The third thing that goes along with location is your floor plan and your aesthetics. Doesn't sound, the younger version of myself, let's say 15 years ago, just wanted to save. And I didn't necessarily understand the importance of the aesthetics and the floor plan. And I can tell you that as soon as I did start to understand that, it really makes a difference. It sets the mood for your brand. It sets the mood for your customer experience. When I'm talking about aesthetics, I'm talking about the floor, what type of floor you have, the lighting that you have. I'm talking about the paint color, and also how you have everything laid out, right? Do you have your colors aesthetically put together like we do on this rack here? Or is everything just kind of shoved out willy-nilly? Think of the experiences that you have when you visit your favorite retail locations and the experiences that you have when you are visiting a retail location that's very messy, unorganized. Maybe the temperature is really hot. Maybe their music is either very outdated, or it's too loud, or it's too quiet. Those are the types of things. For example, an easy way for me to point that out is if you notice my clothing rack back here, we have all of our shirts on these beautiful velvet hangers, except for there's the one white plastic hanger that stands out like a sore thumb. Those are the types of things to consider when you are thinking about those aesthetics and that floor plan and that experience that you want your customer to have when they walk into your shop. The fourth tip is just to make sure you have that legal stuff in order. It's not fun to talk about, and it does vary a lot from state to state, but there are a couple things that are kind of common denominators along that. The first and foremost is insurance, business insurance, depending on the state you're in and the type of business that you have. You're also going to need to cover at least the contents within the space that you're leasing. Some landlords may also require you to have insurance for the outside of the building as well, in the case that something would happen. Again, that's something that's really important to make sure you understand within your lease. Insurance is there to transfer liability, but some of those liabilities would not only put you out of business, they could completely bankrupt you as well. There is also unemployment insurance that is sometimes carried and paid to for the state, and sometimes you actually have to pay for that directly to your insurance agent. I've had businesses in 2 different states, one of which we just pay on our quarterly taxes that we pay for our team. The other state, you actually do have to shop around and find the best price, and I just bought it through my insurance agent. You also are going to need a sales tax permit, which is just something that you apply for and you get through your state. And secondarily to that is your federal EIN, which is your employment identification number. Think of it like a social security number for your business. It is how the government knows that you are a business, what have you, whatever your number is. And yes, you have reported your taxes, you have filed these, maybe you haven't. It's just a way for them to identify you, but it also works like a social security number. So when you want to go open that checking account, when you are looking for a business line of credit or a credit card in your business's name, that is just something that you're going to need to have. The fifth most important thing that I wish I would have maybe known / tip that you really need to consider is your inventory, because it will definitely make or break your retail location, your brick and mortar location. You have to make it a part of that business plan. And I can tell you right now, inventory just sucks. It will take up all of your cash, but it is something that you have to have. So you need to find that fine line, that gray area that's somewhere in between scarcity. You want to have things for your customers to come in and look at and pick up and hold. You want to have things that are trendy to your industry, relevant to whatever it is that you are selling, but you also want to make sure that you don't have too much. From somebody that has been on both sides of it, I can tell you both are really scary. Having less is probably more frustrating, but it is actually just as damaging as having too much. So you definitely need to make sure that when you're going to your markets, when you're planning to stock your shelves, when you're planning for events or different types of the year, just stick to that business plan. And you know what? If you do it right, you'll be able to afford more and more expensive or better things later. With that being said, don't be afraid to take a gamble. Just make sure that it is a gamble that you could afford to lose. Number 6 kind of goes without saying, especially since you guys are all attending this virtual profit or crafting camp, is to build a marketing plan. A marketing plan is different than a business plan. However, I feel like it's just as important. This is something that I still struggle with a little bit myself, and something that I didn't even know what was when I opened my first brick and mortar location. So your marketing plan basically is going to have like the voice and the branding and everything for your business, and you need to make sure it's very consistent. Make a logo, get a branding guide, make sure that you're carrying that across every platform that you are using, even those maybe networking groups that you meet in person with, right? So just strategically plan out those dollars and those posts and all of that content as much as you possibly can. Even if your budget only allows for free social posting, still make sure that you're consistent and that you're using that consistent voice and that you're learning. And one thing that I think is definitely up and on the rise is the platform called LinkedIn, especially if you are more of a local brand. It's just really important. People like to read about other local businesses. There is a lot of networking that gets done on there, and you might learn about some important in-person networking events that are happening within your community. And especially those local brick and mortar stores definitely kind of need to band together, and there's always a great group of support within all communities. Moving on to number 7. Now this is only when you get there. Do not start out this way because it works better just to start out as by yourself, as a solo employee, as a solo team member, because then you can understand what you actually need. And if you haven't had a brick and mortar location and then you're just opening one, it's very much like opening a new business, even if it's just an extension of your online business, because everything, the interaction, the people, the way that your day-to-day operations are going to look really different. Your team is also like the second most expensive thing that you need to put into that business plan. And you just need to make sure that when you're hiring, hire really slow and hire with values. Even if your first team member, your first employee is a part-time high school person, maybe that just comes in to give you a little bit of a break, maybe it's an intern, whatever that is, just make sure that over time you're just building that team and you're doing it with intention, and you're hiring people that you are giving roles to that are going to represent your brand and your business. Because if you pick wrong, what you're going to do, and you're probably going to do it about 30% of the time, it is a lot worse to deal with than if you just take your time and you do it right and you get that team member or that team that's just a really good fit for you and for your brand. Somebody out there thinks you are just as amazing as you are. Number 8 kind of goes without being said as well, but it's that technology integration. And so what I'm talking about here is you're probably already having an online presence, I'm just guessing. And if you don't, definitely start there. But you definitely need to have, like Google, for example, and other search referrers. You need to make sure that you are having a profile on those sites, right? So that if somebody Googles your business, they can find their information on Yelp, on Yellow Pages, on Google, on, oh my goodness, there is like probably a dictionary like volume, like, old school dictionary volume full of search referrers out there. And all of them have at least one free option for you to put your name, your address, your phone number, and a little bit about your business. Make sure that your website is click and mortar, even if you're using like a social platform to be able to sell, like through Facebook or through Meta, one of those marketplaces, where people have the option to have that item or that service or whatever it is downloaded or shipped, but they also have the option to purchase it online and come to pick up in your store. That keeps you very relevant, especially after we made it through 2020 and all of that mess. This is just common practice now. Another thing that you maybe want to consider is having online scheduling for appointments, consultations, if you're teaching any sort of classes, and to make sure that that appointment app works for what you want, because there is a lot of them out there. We like to just keep it simple. We use Calendly. I think that it's very user-friendly and it looks pretty. It's very easy to insert your link into websites and then also just in your email signature. And there are a ton of other super handy apps out there, as you know, and you just need to really find the ones that can help you. And there's probably some AI type apps out there too that you could really find the one that works the best, or the couple that work the best, to kind of have that tool to help build content and things like that. Number 9, I've only done this twice. It's a tip that I would love to share with you and tell you to go ahead and just do it, even though you just want to get the door open and you've put in all of this work. So have that grand opening celebration, not only just to celebrate the awesome job that you did, finally getting from having that business plan, that piece of paper, that idea, to actually having the physical brick and mortar location. Just make sure that you make it a part of your marketing plan. Make a Facebook event, put it out there, post it, share it into your local groups, because not only is it a way to get people into your business, and then you can show people that may not have known you were there in the first place. It's a good networking idea, and it's a way to kind of just give yourself a pat on the back for all of the hard work you did. If your community has a chamber of commerce, this is a great idea to have them come to, because it puts you face to face with a lot of, or at least the ambassadors that would come and attend that grand opening celebration, so you can have that connection and you can meet those faces, and local people like doing business with other local people. So cheers to you. And the last tip or trick or hindsight thing that I would tell you is just be patient. Just because you build it does not mean that your shop is going to get filled up. It doesn't mean things are going to be flying off the shelf. Maybe right away they will, of course, especially if you have your good grand opening celebration, your marketing plan, and you have a nice inventory selection, that might go really well, but it's going to take time, regardless of how good your business plan is, regardless of your location or any of these things. You just got to give it time. I do not know the current stat, but there is a very high percentage of businesses, especially brick and mortar businesses, that don't make it past that 5-year mark. And sometimes I wonder if some of that, of course things happen, but could just be due to lack of patience. You just got to give that your brand time to get that momentum. You got to get people in there, especially these days, there's information everywhere about all of the things going on. All of the space is just very clouded, and you just got to give people time to learn who you are and how awesome you are and what it is that you offer to people. And eventually it's going to work. Your hard work will pay off. They will come, but you just got to be patient. So I guess that kind of sums up my top 10 tips or tricks or things that I wish I would have known when I opened my brick and mortar location. And for those of you that are watching this that are going to be taking that step, I will go ahead and we'll put, our top 10 tips in a downloadable or a slideshow type thing for you to be able to check out and follow. If anybody has questions, they can just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer. And I just truly wish you guys all the best, because there's enough work for everybody, and there's something to be said for having that brick and mortar location. So again, I'm Brittany Anton, and thank you so much for watching.